Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I'm incredibly excited you're here because today we're unpacking something that is completely upending the hospitality industry. If you own a short-term rental, manage properties, or just love keeping a pulse on where the world is heading, you really need to pay attention to this. The demographics of travel are shifting massively. We're seeing a totally new approach to hosting, and it's being driven by a younger generation that speaks an entirely different travel language.
To help decode all of this bizarre internet slang and figure out what it actually means for your bottom line, we've put together a quick roadmap. We'll be looking at the travel paradigm shift, the art of doing nothing, seeking authentic experiences, and finally, adapting your Airbnb strategy. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Section 1, the travel paradigm shift. Because, every generation fundamentally rewrites the rules of global travel, and we're right in the middle of the next big wave.
It really comes down to a complete shift in priorities. Think about the old way we used to travel. Boomers, millennials, it was all about the bucket list, right? Rushing from landmark to landmark. But the new way? Gen Z is totally flipping the script. It's not about what to see anymore. It's about chasing a feeling. It's about disconnecting and just slowing down.
In fact, younger travelers are literally asking, where can I spend an entire weekend without leaving my Airbnb? Just think about that for a second. The accommodation isn't just a place to crash after a long day of touring anymore. The property itself is the destination. And that realization leads us perfectly into Section 2, the art of doing nothing. Because let's be real, modern burnout has given rise to a whole new category of travel focused entirely on recovery.
You might have seen this first term blowing up online, room rotting. Now don't let the gross name fool you. Room rotting just means traveling with absolutely zero intention of doing much of anything. It's spending hours on a balcony, reading a novel, and enjoying the sheer luxury of doing nothing. I want to be super clear here. This isn't laziness. For this generation, it's a very deliberate and vital form of mental and physical recovery. Forget the schedules.
So if your guests are choosing to stay inside all day, your physical environment becomes absolutely everything. You have to prioritize specific amenities. We're talking sweeping sea views, private balconies, couches you can literally sink into, high-quality beds, blazing fast Wi-Fi, and gorgeous interiors. Prioritizing these features over generic tourist brochures is exactly how you make your property the star of the show.
Building on that exhaustion, we have the MenTB. In internet speak, MenTB is just short for mental breakdown. So a MenTB trip is a getaway booked specifically by totally overwhelmed professionals who just need to recharge in absolute quiet. This trend is being heavily driven by remote workers and burnt-out entrepreneurs. They don't want a crowded museum tour. They desperately need peaceful surroundings and natural light.
Which perfectly tees up the concept of the Why-vacation. Instead of throwing a dart at a map and choosing a specific place, people are choosing a feeling, peace, healing, creativity. The destination simply exists to support that desired emotion. So maybe they don't just want another Greek beach, they specifically want the feeling of calm that comes from quiet mornings looking out over the Aegean Sea.
And check out the anatomy of what's being called a dry trip. Look at this breakdown. 30% hiking, 30% wellness and recovery, 20% reading, and 20% sunrise walks. Notice what's missing here. Nightlife. It is completely gone from the pie chart. The ultimate goal is to return home feeling healthier than when they arrived, making nature-adjacent destinations super relevant right now.
I absolutely love this quote. Tourists visit attractions, travelers visit neighborhoods. It hits the nail on the head and serves as the perfect pivot point for us. We know they travel to rest, but when they finally do decide to step outside the Airbnb, how exactly are they exploring?
Well, that brings us to Section 3, seeking authentic experiences. Gen Z is actively rebelling against the overcrowded, influencer-driven tourism we've seen dominate the last decade.
They're doing this through what they call de-influence travel. This means actively running away from those identical, overcrowded photo spots everyone has seen a million times online. They want places that aren't trending. This is a massive advantage for authentic locations. For instance, looking at data from Planbnb and Kavala, we see travelers skipping highly saturated markets like Santorini or Mykonos for local spots in Kavala where they actually feel like they're discovering something genuine.
This desire leads directly to local lore hunting. Guests want to eat where the locals eat, hit up the neighborhood bakeries, and find family-owned cafes. They're constantly turning to hosts and asking, hey, where do you actually go on a Tuesday? And let me tell you, those hyper-local recommendations almost always end up being the absolute highlight of their trip.
Because ultimately, what they're really searching for is a canon event. That's an unexpected, completely unforgettable moment that literally becomes the defining story of their holiday. It's getting blissfully lost in an old town or chatting with locals at a corner taverna. You absolutely can't put that on a schedule. But as a host, you can totally set the stage for it by pointing them in the right direction.
To make room for those magic moments, we're seeing the rise of anti-itinerary travel. Forget those stressful hour-by-hour spreadsheet itineraries on the left. It's all about the wide-open path on the right, leaving massive blank spaces in the day for spontaneous beach trips or coffee stops. Ditch the rigid top 10 lists and give your guests flexible, off-the-beaten-path ideas instead.
We're also seeing something called mirror trips. This is when a holiday is built entirely around a traveler's hyper-specific personality and interests, a photographer chasing dramatic coastlines, or a digital nomad hunting for an inspiring workspace. Generic guides just don't cut it anymore. Personalized recommendations tailored to who your guest actually is are absolutely crucial.
And rather than blowing all their money on one massive yearly vacation, they're side-questing. They prefer several smaller, completely spontaneous 3-day weekends. If your property is easily reached by car from neighboring regions, you are sitting on a goldmine for these last-minute escape artists.
All right, so we've decoded the vocabulary. Let's bring it all home to the practical application in Section 4, Adapting Your Airbnb Strategy. How do we turn all these concepts into actual bookings?
Well, you have to recognize exactly what modern guests prioritize. They want peaceful locations with great outdoor living, authentic neighborhoods, super flexible check-ins, and really unique design. They want experiences, not just attractions. Highlighting these shifting preferences is the key to marketing your property effectively and attracting those higher quality bookings.
This is honestly why professional property management is such a game changer right now. Look at companies like Planbnb and Kavala. They don't just hand over keys. They're constantly monitoring these exact guest trends, optimizing their listings and photography for how people actually search today, and providing that ultra-local expertise. The language of travel is changing fast, and the properties that adapt first are the ones that are going to win.
Which leaves us with one final, really provocative thought. When you take a hard look at your listing, are you selling a destination or are you selling a feeling? I highly encourage you to reflect on your own hosting strategies through that lens. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.